Organizing Committee of the Association for Cable Access Producers. And I'm Harold Channer. I was voted in either by good fortune or oversight on the part of people who selected me to be interim president for a year. And we're having a meeting here in Manhattan with some of the members of the organizing committee. We've got about 9 people on it. We have 4 of them here now. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to talk some about public access, what we think about it, what the future is, what the problems are, and talk about things in a comprehensive way. And we'll be putting this up on YouTube so you can view and so forth. So welcome to the meeting. And maybe I'll just introduce on my immediate left. This is Josh Walensky. He can talk a little bit about himself. And then if I may, beyond him is Carl Pearson. And then there's the Reverend Joseph Ben David. And then there's Dean Lauren. These are all here. You can see us and you can hear us. So that's the story. That's what's going on here now. So Josh, maybe you could just talk a little bit about yourself, and then we'll do that, maybe all of us, and then let's get down to talking about ACAP, or Association of Cable Access Producers, cable access. Where do we go from here? What are the realities?
Well, I'm Josh Walensky, and I went to City College. I have a degree and all of that stuff. And of course, now I talk to young people about that all the time, and I tell them that CUNY should still be free. There's only one thing that stands in the way, and it isn't who's going to pay for it, because we've always paid for everything, whether it's the junk mail or the war in Iraq. The key word is priority. What's the priority? So anyway, my role in independent media has been, for years, I've been a volunteer in independent media, especially WBAI, and I always played a pivotal role as a galvanizer and a messenger. But it wasn't until, like for instance, in the 60s, Ravi Shankar came to the City College, and I more or less approached him and asked him, why don't you do a program for WBAI? And he said, well, how do I do that? I said, just go down, speak to the arts director, and so on. Of course, he did, and she really took over the idea. I helped them with recorders, which in those days weighed a ton and all of that stuff, and did a bit of production, but I never got credit for it. So as the years went on, I got a little more serious, and eventually I started doing some programs on WBAI, just as when I approached Manhattan Neighborhood Network, I really was really excited and enthusiastic about the caliber of producers they have at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, public access here on the island, and I've just got more and more involved in it. I love it. I've taken many of the courses. I've learned how to operate the equipment. I've become certified. And what's so exciting about public access is that it's a continuous process. You meet more and more people, and you learn more and more things, and your experiences are just outstanding. And you're amazed at the quality of people who are drawn to public access. But you're also amazed by ordinary people who just come on the scene, and you're amazed at their intellect and how much talent they have. So at the end, you come to the conclusion that Homo sapiens can really do an awful lot and do it very well if they're encouraged like by an institution like public access.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Everything is free. That's something that's worth noting, because
well, I don't like the word free but there's no exchange of money of any kind. But I guess to communicate it quickly, you would say free.
Yeah,
but
to
actually,
the producer, it's free.
Yes, but actually free would be if you were standing on the corner, someone gave you something, and you wouldn't have to contribute for it or work for it. Actually, the people at public access work many hours, like you, Harold. I think you work close to 25 hours a day, even though there's
aren't that
only
many,
24 hours
yeah.
in the day.
Yeah, it's voluntary.
So
Yeah.
I wouldn't, but there is no exchange of money on any level.
Because the considerable capital costs and operating costs involved are met by a different process than any other communication systems in the history of mankind. I would submit it makes it very important and maybe a model for the whole economy. But that's another issue that I'm interested in. Well, so what about Carl?
Well, I was just amazed at the cross-fertilization of ideas because of what I just heard from the two of you. It's very interesting, and it's, I think, very relevant. And I didn't even think of saying anything except when I heard the two of you say what you did. And I just had a meeting today with a person, and we have now formed, and we've reached an agreement to set up in America a series of free colleges throughout the country based at the local level.
Okay.
And that free, and cable, imagine how cable locally could promote a free college. Absolutely no tuition at all, and it's amazing. I'm thrilled at learning how to do it. I had the idea for having a $2 per hour college, but I met today with someone who showed me how to do it at absolutely free.
I think that's something the zeitgeist is telling it. Everything's moving toward being able to do communications free.
So
and that's a real challenge to the established system.
So what we offer really is the opportunity for Josh to have his ideas, for me to have my ideas, all of us to have our various ideas, and it's really a mixing pot. It's where we can have these oddball ideas, and it's pretty odd to have a free college, but isn't it funny that the two of us here had today in the same day are talking about it independently of each other? We never spoke a word before to either of us concerning that, and we both had that idea. How many other ideas are there? How many other people are there out there that would like to do what you want to do? And we have the medium here by which we can do it. We have to do something to promote this medium, because this is how the country and the world can develop.
Some people think that the public access cable television, which got started institutionally, at an institutional level around 1970, coaxial cable was coming. And there are some people I know particularly who think that cable television, or much less public access cable television, you want to distinguish between them, is in a certain sense outdated because everything is going to be done on the internet. And you can do things in cyberspace. You can put things on YouTube for free now, have it archived for all the world to see, and all kinds of things you can do. So that's another issue, roiling the waters.
New development. Brand new. I've got to throw it out because this is what we do. We have ideas here.
Be sure Carl Pearson's going to come in with about 5 or 6 new developments that happen this afternoon.
New development.
Yeah.
My son is...
John.
No, Nick.
Oh,
My
Nick.
son is learning how to be a programmer, and he's doing it. He has a phenomenal background, math and physics and stuff like that.
Right.
So he's really phenomenal. And he's learned that there's what is known as a content management system. There are various content management systems, but he's found the leading one, and it has a module where anybody can put YouTube on their own website in about an hour's time. You can create a YouTube on your own website. So that this is a remarkable feat where all of the complexity of YouTube you can put on your own website with a Drupal programmer.
A Drupal program. I've never heard the term Drupal in my life.
I didn't think you had, but that's, I never heard of it.
But a word a day brings on a new lexicon. Yeah, but go ahead.
So the idea is that Drupal is a content management system that allows people to build a website according to the modules that are open source.
Yeah.
Everyone in the world is allowed to contribute and take from it. They build it, it's open source, there's no fee, and they have a module where anyone can now put the equivalent of YouTube on their own website.
Yeah, that's really good.
And that would be interesting for you to think about.
And you have a couple hundred websites you've done.
About over 100
There was a
websites.
piece on the internet the other day about a man who's written 200,000 books.
Oh, my
And
God.
it's really a way, and he just, I've got it printed on my back desk, and what he's really doing is setting up algorithms on various subjects, and it's done by, he's got about 60 computers, 7 people on staff, and actually the computer is linked so that it links the information and puts it out in a book form with the USBN number and all that sort of thing.
There's
Really interesting things are happening on the
There's a new
programming.
concept now with programming, and that is that it's called Web 3.0. We're in Web 2.0 right now. That's what programmers say. I'm not such a programmer. But Web 3.0 is where they have syntax for a web page, and they understand through this syntax the relevance of the page concerning your own inquiry. So that whereas Google comes out with just pages that have your words in it, this new syntax that has a subject, a predicate, an object, they can then evaluate and see whether or not this is really what you were looking for, and it's a much better method. This is coming up in Web 3.0.
Yeah, I would submit that the open source part of the internet development is kin to public access.
Yes, exactly.
Public access was there on the frontier before internet was but a dream in anybody's mind, really effectively. But that's something we want to try and find out what's the significance and where do we go from here as far as public access, and particularly the producers of public access programming in an association that be looking out for their interests. But okay, Reverend Joseph Ben David, take it away.
My name is Joe Ben David, and I am something that I'm calling a psychologist. You know, I'm not a psychologist, but an educator, a psychological educator of psychology, but in the framework of a universal humanistic kind of an idea system. In other words, I have been active most of my life, and now I am 88 years old. I have been acting most of my life in terms of radical human rights.
Radical human rights, okay.
Yeah, whether it was in defense against anti-Semitism or in defense of the Palestinians who are being unjustly treated and robbed of their rights.
You were in Palestine in the
I
30s.
lived in Palestine before it was Israel for 15 years,
Uh-huh.
and I was a conscientious objector, but served in the army in the medical corps.
And you were associated with that great Martin Buber.
I was associated with most of the, how should I say, extreme human rights activists in
Judah
Israel.
Magnus?
Judah Magnus I didn't know because
Oh.
he died before I was able to be connected with him.
And now you're the head of the Humanist Church, right?
Now I'm the senior minister of the Church of Humanism,
Mhm.
which is now in its 30th year.
Congratulations, that's
And,
some record.
It's the only humanist organization which is not atheist and materialist, although it affirms idealism and materialism as realities, but it also has a God concept.
Mhm.
And in that respect, it connects with millions and billions of people. And this God concept, of course, is not the pie in the sky, but the God concept is seen as the creative process in nature, which includes all the capabilities of human beings. It includes science and psychology and history and physiology and so on and so forth. And I gave over 3,500 speeches and seminars.
When did you have time to eat,
About
Joseph?
300 of them alone on sexual enlightenment,
Mhm.
because because sexuality is such a tremendously important factor, not only in personal and interpersonal relations, but in politics. Wars have been waged because of sexual repression or all kinds of sexual kind of aspirations or ambitions. And so I'm right now in the process of developing a campaign to introduce an essay which is quite unique because it's the most advanced theological idea system that is based on what is called process theology, which is the theology that does not see God as a person but as a process, starting with Paul Tillich, John Dewey, and Hartshorne, and some of these people. I'm standing, so to say, on their shoulders, but adding a little bit of my own to it. So
Good.
It's in the context of something historically quite significant.
Yeah, it's interesting to bring up those spiritual things. We're in the middle of the election season. We're on the verge of the primary election in Pennsylvania, and Barack Obama was just brought to task by the Hillary Clinton forces for talking down to the as an elitist to the people. Michael Lerner sent an email, Rabbi Michael Lerner, it was very good, about how he is of a he has a spiritual content, but that progressive people, I think we probably all would count ourselves in various ways progressive in a certain sense, they tend to be secular and have written the sacred or the spiritual traditions out of a consideration, feeling everything's economic, that sort of thing. But it's an interesting dialect, and we want to try and link not only public access, but public access to larger issues of the human condition rather than just focusing on certain questions of how public access itself is to be organized and what the problems are, it would seem to me. I don't know if you can understand.
Well, I'm introducing a concept which I call unitary pluralism. And that concept actually destroys the contradiction between the secular and the religious.
Well, send it to Michael Lerner. He would like to have it.
Well,
and send it to Barack Obama.
Yeah, you
Maybe.
see, for the time being, my essay is not published because I have to protect it from being torn into pieces and ridiculed, and before it becomes more or less accepted, significant piece of research by important people.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm working on right now.
Well, get it right, but get it out quick. The world needs it.
I have an interesting thing. The way I'm a copyright lawyer, and one of the ways to protect your work when screenplay writers call me and say, "How can I protect my work?" is I say, "Look, send it to a few people that are apt to steal it, and then give me a call." That's the best way, because if you don't have the ability to market it yourself, then you have nothing anyway. You only have it work. But if you send it to someone who's apt to steal it, who also can distribute it, people call me up and say, "Look, I understand they're getting ready to steal my work. What should I do?" I say, "Shh, don't do a thing. Don't try to move for an injunction. Don't do anything. Let them steal it, for God's sakes.
And then
Sue them."
pounce. Thank you, Counselor. It's good to have you in our
I'm
corner.
not that smart. I just copyright it.
Yeah, but
And
hand it to them and let them steal it, and then you can have broad distribution and collect money at the same
Yeah,
time.
listen to the advice,
Well,
maybe.
if I would have someone who
Work
can
the
treat
angles.
it in this way, that would be great.
But don't use an agent. You know why? Because an agent won't back you up.
Oh.
An agent deals with the publishers, and they won't be your turncoat and testify against the publishers. So it's not, you can't.
Not for
The
only
agents
10%.
are your enemy, basically. They don't allow you to sue the publishers because they would lose the ability to place with the publishers.
You two ought to get together after and get that down. And Dean,
Yeah,
talk.
then I'll
Oh.
work on it. Without
Okay,
the-
Dean, introduce yourself a little bit, okay, please, and then we'll
Sure. Well, do you know what time it is?
Yeah, it's I can't see my watch. It was 8 o'clock, I think.
Oh, 8 o'clock, great.
8:04.
My name is Dean Lauren. I'm a producer at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and I'm interested in keeping public access in the same format or the same availability in Manhattan as it has been since 94, 93 at Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And that's where I'm at. I'd like to see it continue on.
Yeah, you've been at how long then, Dean?
Since 94.
94. And you generally think you like it, more or less. And
I see public access as a tool for good government.
And you've been in help to so many people that have been treated badly by elements of the system. Or that the line of people you help just goes all around the block, a couple of blocks, it seems to me. You're always helping people that are being not well treated by the courts, particularly, or by the judicial system, or you were trained in the law, right?
Right. I'm finding that there is a Archimedes said it best. Give me a lever and I'll move the world.
Yeah.
So I believe that public access gives a small voice a very large lever to move an issue. And if you're good at that, then you can, unfortunately I did not pursue that all those years I was helping people. So don't tell them that.
You're not the first in the history of good people in this universe that took that course.
Right. I'm a lot smarter now, and I actually see that there's a lot of public access could be used beneficially to promote change. I think, and that's what I'm for.
Well, okay. Well, okay, so that's good. Well, I'm glad you could come, everything. This is, what's the date today? It's the 16th of April, 2008 and so forth. And like I didn't say it myself, I've been doing public access since before there was public access, I think, because I got the use of the 4th or 5th Portapac that came off the boat from Japan. Everything was coming from Japan because I was associated with Paul Ryan, who had studied, he was a Jesuit, and he had studied at Fordham with Marshall McLuhan, and was a brilliant. And they had a group called Rain Dance, and we became friends, and that was when I was academically connected to a university and so forth. And so he let me use his little Portapac. It was a machine, and you had a reel-to-reel, black and white, and you could take a camera and make television. Peter Goldmark Senior had only just invented videotape, and that made it possible. And so an individual could go out and make television. We had never had that. We had we had 16 millimeter film and that sort of thing. But it was there, and so we started doing that before there was anything in New York. We were up in New Paltz, and it was just getting started. But it does seem to me that institutionally, a date that you could put to beginning the effective introduction of cable television into the communication mix was probably right around the year 1970. And it was coming, there was a Sloan Commission report, which was a major report by much of the intellectual community and business, called the cable television, and it was subtitled The Medium of Abundance, because it was able to bring an abundant capacity, whereas the physics of over-the-air broadcasting, only so many markets, so many channels in a given market and so forth, but it was harboring an abundant capacity. And so it was starting then, and then public access was formulated right around 1950 in a unique way, it seems to me. We mentioned before, we were if we could, do you think the future is good for public access? We talked about the internet, maybe subsuming it. A lot of people are going away from from cable television to the internet now with the things that you can do. There's so many things you can do, but it seems to me that public access cable television is unique. Maybe unique in a singular way in terms of all communication, because we mentioned before, let me bring it up, because I wrote a little thing, I distributed it around, I put a lot of thought into it, kind of rough language and everything, but multimedia production, particularly at approaching high-end capability and so forth, involves real capital costs. I mean, you have machines that cost a great deal, and if you're going to set up an institutional structure, there are capital costs, real capital costs, and there are operating costs and all that sort of thing. We have about 3,000 public access facilities across the country, and they've been they've had the legacy of actions that were taken which set up a unique way in which financing of a multimedia production and distribution capability dedicated to the people. In the first sense, it was the only time there was something dedicated to the people rather than through a private sector, public sector dialectic that most of our thinking is. There was a civil society emerging, and there was weight and opinion in this area. It involved your NGOs and other things that have emerged in a unique way. And it made for influence in the environment that was able to do something. And it's probably better not to think, we call it public access, we talk about private sector, public sector. It was probably better to say government sector, because the government or the political process has the ability to tax. The private sector has the ability to operate in a profit-making way and so forth. But the public access is in a different realm, and it's financed in a way that is unique. Maybe. It seems to me, I'd ask you what you think, but it's financed by a franchising process where the cable companies, in the case of Manhattan and other ones across the country, are, to quote Lord Beaverbrook, who said a media entity is a license to print money. The cable system was a license to print money. It's going to bring a cable into the home. It's going to be able to bill systematically for services, some even vital services, and it's going to be able to turn off the service if the people do not pay. It's a license to print money, and everybody knew it. And they knew when they were coming with that, and they wanted to get the franchise to build out their systems, they were competing for that. And there was ability to bring some public sector, mayor's office, that sort of thing, some people from the civil society were able to bring influence to where we set up a process where the cable companies who were going to build in a particular area, could not retain all their earnings in the normal way that happens in the economy as a whole. Most of your financing of new technology and so forth is done with retained earnings. You have a private sector, then you have the ability to tax and spend. The whole argument that sort of encompasses. But this is a different thing, and the cable companies are required now through law, and it's written into the law. It's a fait accompli, that they cannot retain all their earnings in the normal way to make their feasibility studies and finance whatever it is they're going to do for growth and so forth. But they have to pay back money through in a public way for three things. Public is paid. Public, educational, and government. So we know educational and government are traditionally part of the system, but the public access is unique. We didn't have anything like that in any other part of communications. There's no public service payback to the citizen for telephone. There was no payback obligation on the part of ABC or the networks for local television or for national network television. There was no payback or responsibility to the citizens for global satellite-delivered networking and so forth. And there hadn't been, in any communication, there was never an obligation that came into being to where they could, they had to set aside a certain amount of their earnings to set up a facility to allow multimedia communication development of programming and distribution in the name of the people. I don't think there's anything else like that. The computer industry does not have that obligation. Mr. Gates has no right, no obligation that's grown out of this amalgam of interests and so forth as public access cable television was birthed. Yeah, can anybody understand what
You're
I'm saying?
talking about how
And am I
you
all
understand,
mixed
yeah.
up on that? Yeah.
You're saying that we have
We're,
$1 billion worth of a network here of all the cable, the community cable facilities in the United States. We have $1 billion enterprise.
well, it would be more than that.
Probably more.
Yeah, much
So
more.
a huge thing.
We got,
And let's
we
say
got, they got billions in
so,
earnings.
so let's say that it's worth, in terms of what we could do to assist it, that maybe we would have the influence of maybe 20% of ABC, for example. I mean, there's got to be some relationship that all of these stations would have if organized properly.
Ah,
If
that's
we,
interesting.
so we might have 20% of the effect of one of the major television channels.
You mean the public access realm?
Right, if you look at the
I
whole
think
thing.
that's, well, maybe. It might be. I don't know what
Well,
the
I'm
figures
not
are.
guessing, but you got to start with an assumption
Yeah,
that we
okay,
have a
yeah.
percentage, a goal that could be as effective as maybe 10 or 20% of just one network.
Yeah.
And then what do we do to make it that way? How can we? And my idea, in part, was to try to give producers the support they need to find the people and the subjects that would be helpful to them to be able to score with good ratings in their own communities by giving them potential shows and leads to who would make good people on their shows, good subject matters. That would be one thing that we can do to help producers throughout the country, give them names and subjects and leads and encourage them, and also to help establish maybe ratings so that we can help the shows get additional audience
Yeah.
by a whole bunch of things. We ought to consider ourselves a network is really what I'm saying. And it's a multi-billion-dollar network that we have potentially that we ought to exploit for the good of the people.
Oh, that's interesting. One of the things about public access is it doesn't have to be all a star system. The networks are, with the advertising and that, wanting eyeballs, advertising revenue, they want to have a star or something. And one of the things about public access is you've got abundant capacity. You have you have much capability, and so there's room for the kazoo band.
Do you want to be
Or
honest?
the democracy, it's maybe got a promise for honest to God democracy rather than a star-led world where you have stars and everybody are affiliators with the base that the star is set. I mean, that's what I'm saying is if communication for everybody is different in a certain sense than communication where we would maybe find and birth stars that could gain eyeballs and so
Are we
forth.
allowed to be honest right now
Yes,
in,
sure.
in front of the camera?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going
It's-
to be honest, and that is that I understand that I'm a newcomer. I understand that not many people watch community cable, and we ought to do something to change that. And whatever we need to do, whether it's marketing or creating a star or doing something, we ought to create a greater public interest in watching community cable or cable access. We ought to do that, even if we have to unfortunately create a star in the process. So I don't think that our objective is to create a star, but I think we ought to create a greater audience, and we ought to think of how we can do that.
Yeah, but what about this idea that this thing, am I off base on that? Is there something I don't understand? But in all of communication, like I put in that little paper, from carrier pigeons to Pony Express to clay tablets to papyrus, all communication, there's never been a system which is set up a way in which the financing is set up in a way paid for by the industry. It doesn't apply to steel. It doesn't apply to electricity. It doesn't apply to any of the utilities even, or even telephone. But that they're responsible for setting up an institution to make that available to the people so that the capital costs, the operating costs for a serious operation are coming from the cable industry as a matter of law and responsibility, not their charity or their their public relations or something. Although there is that element, but that it's only cable television that has this little window of opportunity that opened up around 1970 that ought to be nurtured as a model, maybe for other aspects of the economy, particularly if we're tending toward a world where everything's becoming free. We're going to need economic models that are going to be able to handle an overwhelming abundance that may be coming in over the transom as the result of our technological development. It's not coming from our normal political leadership.
And isn't it funny that right at the same time we're talking about abundance, I'm reading in the newspapers about the possible food shortage, that because of oil and other things that we're having food prices that are going sky high, people are starving all over the world, so that our abundance theory really may be somehow not materializing.
Well, what about that? How do we do it? You've been thinking about these kind of things, David. I mean, it may be abundance in terms of our capability. We have a capability to provide probably for everybody in a unique way, just as we now have apparently a capability with the weapon systems that also found themselves finally after 200,000 years to the point we've been around, to the point where they have weapon systems now that were they to be unleashed, it is apparently species lethal. There would be no single survivor. That's an existential new reality. The adverse side maybe is we're transcending material scarcity, which has been the context in which all human institutions evolve. So in that sense, it's capability, it's not the reality.
You know what the press, and this is where we come in.
Yeah.
The main press doesn't talk about one of the reasons, the main reason for shortage. Do you know what it is? I think it's monopolies.
Yeah, monopolies. Well, we've allowed monopoly conditions.
Well, we ought to be fighting monopolies, at least with what we have here, because monopolies thrive on cutting back on production and therefore increasing price and decreasing costs by firing people and producing less. That's what monopolies are all about. It applies in the food industry, so that as the food is monopolized and you have less competition, you find that there's less food and higher prices, or higher prices and less food.
Yeah.
It goes hand in hand. So one thing we ought to do probably is think about monopolies and what we can do nationwide by alerting people to what monopolies are, because most people really don't even know that. They don't understand that a lot of the evils of the world probably can be attributed to monopolies, how they control governments, how the governments then do what the monopolists want, and you and I suffer. The whole world suffers as a result.
So it has always been.
Well, we ought to
a few
start
people run
talking
things.
about it.
Yeah, right. What do you think, Joseph?
Well, I think that if we are approaching the social and world problems from the point of view of saving or improving the human condition,
Yes.
we are dealing with something like a locomotive,
Yeah.
whether you call it monopoles or what. It's a locomotive. How do you deal with a locomotive? Do you run with your head against the locomotive? When I was young, I was trained in jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu is a very powerful athletic procedure where you let your enemy come close to you, and then at that moment, if you are trained, you know what to do, and you can defeat your enemy. But I don't think that our main problem or our main goal at this point should be trying to solve these huge problems. I think that first things should go first. For example, why are we here? And do we want there's one thing that is not clear to me. Do we want a unification of all the public access, what do you call it, networks, or do we want a unification of all the producers?
No,
these are two different things.
This is an organization for producers.
We're talking about producers.
And they are citizens who are producing and then you have an administration level where that's where the money goes to facilities
now wait a
from
minute.
the
Are
franchising
these
process.
producers already organized, or we are the first organization, so to say, agency that is trying to create this national organization of producers? Or
It
does
would seem
take-
so.
Yeah.
It would seem so. You can go on the net, and there are many sites and so forth for, like, say, Manhattan Neighborhood Network. That's a facility that gets millions of dollars, comes through this processing. It's a large thing, and they're in South California, they're in Oregon, they're all over. So you have an administration thing set up. You've got people on staff and all that sort of thing. Then you have the producers. And there are many sites that talk about things from the level of the administration people. There's an organization called the Alliance for Community Media that tries to bring those people together and try to represent the producers. But there is no organization of producers,
Well, that's
and
nice.
it's an outreach to them across the country that we want to accomplish.
In other words, we should be the organization, the national organization of producers who are working out. The point of departure is a little
Acorn.
acorn, nothing more, right? But you know, the plant can be a big.
Yeah, if I may, we already have a group down in Dallas that's signed on, and they're being treated really badly. We happen to be, it's a pretty good system in Manhattan. It works pretty well. We got good people on staff, great executive director, that sort of thing. And it's good, but there are places, the people who are at the board of directors level there, they just took over and they're throwing producers out, bringing ad agencies in to make ads, to make money, talking about they have to make money. That's sort of charging money. And he says here, all the costs involved with operating the system of multimedia communication is done by a process whereby the producers do not have to pay anything. It's free and it's available. So the money thing is out of the question. It would take quite a lot of money to produce a program if you were in the open market. But there's this intervening series of agencies that sets public access up totally unique in terms of the communication system of this world or this planet. But I do think it's possible for us to be linked into the larger issues if we're going to try and have a maximally beneficial effect on the human condition and not just look for a niche within the system that's in place to try and look out for the narrow interests of what they have. I think we want to try and reach for a maximum effect in trying to, the burning issues of our time should be of interest to us.
We're still moving sort of beyond the limits of what we here represent and can do.
Well, I don't know. What we're trying to figure out is what do we want to do and on the
Exactly,
basis of what.
exactly. Do we want to be a membership organization of producers, which means that producers would be individual members of ACA?
Well, they've
We
given
want
me
that?
this. Oh, there's another member coming. So, Maggie?
Do you think we want
Maggie?
It's Maggie.
Well, no, it's not. You just came in.
Should we put the tape on?
Oh.
Well, do you
Okay,
think
Willie,
we
I'll
want to
bring you
be
in.
a
Come on
membership
down.
organization?
Maggie?
People, producers would be.
Maggie?
But we-
I know, I think she
Come
was.
down here, Maggie. Come here.
Yeah, but
No.
But producers.
But
would be-
producers-
Maybe
Well,
she
that's
did.
what- But then what do we do for them?
Oh, Margaret, go down, can you?
That's the issue. What do we do for
Bring
them?
Willie
That
up.
means we have to produce some kind of a initial platform or manifesto or...
Well, we're sort of at that level now, trying to figure out what the hell we want to do. A lot of people wanted to set up, Robert's rules, a system of organizing like
Well, I
system.
know with
Yeah, go ahead,
WBAI, producers exert pressure and influence with several organizations, like we have on the unpaid producers. We have an organization of unpaid producers, which really, I don't like that name, but that's the name they use. They should really call them volunteer producers.
Right.
But actually, they make decisions on approving, and giving their recommendations toward new contracts and new ideas and management. Before they hired Anthony Whittle, I attended meetings and they discussed whether his credentials and whether they approve him as an organization, and submitted it to the main bodies who make the final decision, Pacifica. And there is also the organization of paid producers, but they are usually represented by the unions, like APTRA and so on.
That's interesting. I didn't know you had that.
Amy Goodman is a member of APTRA.
Amy Goodman has the words as a
all
star.
the unions, all the official unions, and also the shop stewards have leading positions of authority at WBAI, like for instance, Jose Santiago, the news director, is the shop steward for APTRA, and Paul Martin is the shop steward for the union, the WBAI union.
I am. I'm resting.
And so on. So if there's something they don't like
Okay, everybody.
at a meeting,
Yeah.
they put forth a proposal,
Will you sit down? Sit down over there.
we take the vote on it, and then we submit it.
Oh, okay. She's sitting or on the side?
We
Just listen.
submit it
Sit over
to the
there because we're
authorities.
taping, and we'll introduce you. Be careful with the camera. Don't knock it over. That's our sound.
Very well. Have a seat there. So you get you on
The
camera.
officials.
That's really interesting.
You know, I've got you on the way up.
So let's just introduce another member of the board. Willie Stooks has come in. He's been doing so much good work for a whole lot of people, helping everybody. The minister,
Now,
Baptist minister. We want to introduce him. And now you were just
The unpaid producers also have a lawyer, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, just as in the same class as Carl. I think Carl may know a little more, but I'm sure he's heard of her, Mimi Rosenberg. She's a volunteer producer, and she's our lawyer in unpaid producers. But she is very, very, very aggressive and very astute in keeping everything in order. In fact, in our last meeting, without getting deeply into the stories about WBAI, the manager started lecturing us in a sort of undignified way. And the first thing Mimi said out of her mouth was, "We are adults in this meeting, and we don't want to be spoken to as children." So they do have these
she had an authority in her voice.
forces that pull WBAI and Pacifica together.
A lot of interesting stuff. Carl's our conciliator. I mean, he's the one who's handling the lawyer extraordinaire. And did all that great work on the level of attorney generals and all that. He's in our corner. And one of the principles we set up at that initial meeting is, as far as ACAP is concerned, there will be no money gained by anybody through their activity in ACAP. It will all be done. Carl will not charge for legal services. You will not charge for your services. I will not charge. We will not charge each other. But we will celebrate if there's someone else of an ACAP member becomes successful in the overall society where those values are very strong. We'll celebrate it. That's fine. But here we want it to be on a volunteer basis between people cooperating and no money. Another thing, you were bringing it up, Joseph.
Well, I took a vow of poverty 30 years ago, and I've never paid for anything, and I did, who knows, hundreds
Yeah, I
of
think
weddings
there's
and
something.
funerals and
There's something to be said for that, but then also another thing is that we're going to in the first item you had that you sent one day after our meeting was we should optimize the website. That's true. We have an acaptv.net website that we want to optimize. This will be posted on there and everything like that. But we want to have it as easy as possible and totally free of any cost. That's my thought. I'd like what you think. So that if somebody comes across it, they can, with a click of a mouse, affiliate with ACAP with no going PayPal or paying any money. There'd be no money with them.
We've got a dispute on that, but I agree.
And
We ought
to keep it
encourage membership.
To
And
encourage
not
membership.
discourage them by saying, hey, we want you as a member, but you got to give us $25. I mean,
No.
a lot of people would be turned off.
No, it's also just in keeping with the spirit of the thing that we want to keep it at that level, because what we can do, we can do within what's available to us, and we want to get a national outreach, you know, that kind of thing. But Willie, we've all introduced ourselves. There's a camera there. Camera you know about from television. Do you know anything about producing television?
Yes.
Yes, he's
Just
been
a
at
little
it for
bit.
about 30 years,
Just a little
and
bit.
he's my director, in fact, as a matter of fact. This is Willie Stoops. So give a few words about yourself, because you came in late. We've been about 40 minutes into this, so just a few words of your experience. How much time have you got, Willie, in the realms of television production, particularly access, but television production?
33 years.
33 years, you're getting the hang of it, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
To those that don't know me, everybody calls me Willie,
Mm.
but I am a ordained reverend, a member of the Baptist Ministers Evening Conference of Greater New York and Vicinity. I produce a program called Sunday School Television, and briefly, I shoot from location. I use the Manhattan facility to do my editing, and I also volunteer to help other producers produce public access programs. And because the facility don't charge me to use their facility, I don't charge other producers to help them produce their program.
Much less any other guest that you're dealing with. You don't have a nut that you have to make in order to make it a business proposition. The communication can be without that factor if one wants it to be, without that money factor.
It could
That's
be.
very important, because the money comes from somewhere else. Where that somewhere else is important in terms of the national structure, I would submit. Go ahead.
But however, I'm a member of several organizations, and the committee that I developed to spearhead Sunday School Television, they wanted those members of the committee to have some kind of dues system for the members of the committee. Of course, my work is ministry, so I told them that we're not going to have any dues system structure, because I don't want people to be turned off by dues. However, you got to be careful with what you say, how you're going to operate, because if you don't let people express their interest monetarily, you will get a lot of dead weight.
Well, that's okay. Spell it out.
In other words,
Yeah.
you'll get a lot of people who might be interested, but they won't be committed. And usually when somebody, not that you have to charge a membership fee or have a duesing system, but it can be structured based on their willingness to be committed to help somebody else produce something, so to speak. You know, but if you just open the door for anybody to become a member, and there's no guidelines for them to come in, you're going to have everybody become a member, and then
I would like to have everybody become a member of ACAP. I would like that if everybody became a member. And I think one of the things that are doing, the important, I stress again, trying to stress anyway, the finance thing, which is such a big part of what is the important structuring of human institutions, and the impetus to garner from what you do is so strongly built into all our institutions. It's the primary motive that keeps the society going, and it's seen that way. But here you've got a thing where, you just said it so well, Willie, if I may. You've got a thing where you don't have to have that be the motivating force by which people come together and communicate. And is that something that is a good thing? Allow people to communicate without any thought about utilizing the other person as a market value or seeing people that way, which is the motivating factor of the society. Public access opens it up to where that communication can take place for the people involved in the production and the development of communication where they do not have to be concerned with the business. The costs are taken care of by a process. And is that subversive of some impetus or some understanding of human nature itself? That we're meant to trade off on one another in business deal and make everything be like in the open market, or not? Or should there be a place where it's built upon just cooperation between people who do not have to be concerned with that making the nut or making the business or paying for the cost? Because you have to pass those costs on not only to people who might be working for you, we do it voluntarily. You've been helping me so much I can't believe it, everything. But that sort of thing. No cost. Is that subversive of human nature? And that the attitude that everything has a price and so forth, that's operative within the general society and hierarchy, is that in keeping with human nature? You said it's hard to get people motivated. I think people are motivated because they believe in what they're doing are the things, and they're doing it voluntarily, are the most important things. And the things that are being bought, or their services are being bought, are like in a different category than the people that are really motivated. I'd like to have the people that are really motivated because they believe in something bigger than themselves, other than making money. Because that's such a prominent part of what motivates the society in general, and ought to perhaps be transformed fundamentally if it can be. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, before you start, what time?
Yeah, it's now 8:30. It's 8:40. 8:40.
I just have one comment.
Yeah, please do.
Let's turn that coin around.
I'm going to give some more.
Here we are, dedicated producers. We're in there. And let's continue on the assumption that we are not going to charge, as we have in the past. But I believe that there's something left out of this equation. We have how many households in Manhattan, residential households for television, that are capable for television? I think if we look at that, how many subscribers do we have now?
600,000 in RCA, our Time Warner.
Time
and
Warner.
about 50,000, I think, RCN.
Right. So, but there's another, at least 50,000 to 100,000 of people who don't have public cable because they can't pay the $35 basic cable fee by Time Warner.
Okay.
So, is it our obligation, is it Time Warner's obligation to send just our 4 channels? Channel 17, Channel 34, Channel 56, and Channel 57. Is it Time Warner's and RCN's obligation, because of their franchise, to send these signals free and unscrambled to every household in Manhattan, regardless of whether or not they subscribe to their basic service?
Well, it's a matter of economic justice. People are poor.
Can I?
Yeah.
if I may?